Okay, how's everybody today? Pretty good? Good. Yeah, we've been having I always talk about the weather, but as I said before, if you don't know what to say when you're talking to an American, just talk about the weather. It's a good conversation maker. But yeah, the weather's been beautiful recently. It's been super clear and not too cold, not too hot. So I know many of my foreign friends are very happy when this kind of weather arrives because they really do not like the heat and humidity of Taiwan that happens during most of the year. So when it's cooler like this, they're in a much better mood. But I think I've told you before, I actually like the heat. So this is about as cold as I want it to be. If it gets colder than this, I'm not really happy about that. Probably not. It's funny because people assume that in December it's snowing everywhere, but that's actually not true. Especially in Pennsylvania, Bingzhou, it often doesn't snow there until maybe January or February. But it's very uncertain. Sometimes you'll have a really early snow in October or November, but then it will melt very quickly and then disappear. But then other times you have to wait until January to get your first real big snow. So it really depends. It's hard to say. Obviously there are other parts of America where it starts snowing and it snows a lot, and there's snow on the ground in December. But I think we say in Pennsylvania, at least where my parents' hometown is, a white Christmas is kind of unusual to have a white Christmas. And of course, a white Christmas means there's snow on the ground during Christmas, right? People like that, but I will say that when there's snow on the ground during a white Christmas, it's one of those things where it seems more festive, right? You know the word festive, right? When we say, what does festive mean? Yeah. So it's like the word festival, right? So it's a runaway phone, right? That's the problem with AI. It has its own thinking. Yeah. So, okay. So yeah, when we say festive, it means like it makes you feel like it's a holiday, right? Um, or mood of celebration, right? If you feel like in Taiwan during Nongli Guonian, there's more of a festive, we say mood, right? MOOD. Mood is how you feel, right? If you feel you say today I'm in a very happy mood, or my mood is not very good, or I'm in a bad mood. Of course, we can say that. But if you say you're in a festive mood, it means that you feel like it feels like the holidays. You feel like celebrating. So at Taiwan and certain, especially Lunar New Year, but I'm trying to think what are some other very festive days. Well, maybe Moon Festival. Yeah. Not so much Qingmingjie. That's not really festive, but I don't know, maybe a couple other days. But yeah, so we say a festive mood, and then a festival, of course, is a special day like that. So why don't we say this together? Festive, festive, festive mood, festive mood, festival, festival. Right. So, someone might say, you could actually say, I am feeling very festive today. So you could actually turn the word festive into, here we say festive mood. It's a 形容词. But you could also say, I'm feeling very festive. Or, sometimes when, during Christmas, for example, if one of your friends shows up and they're wearing lots of green and red, right? Someone might say, oh, you look very festive today. Okay. You look festive. So that word festive just looks like somebody wants to celebrate the holiday or have, celebrate the special occasion. So anyhow, it's a good word. But yeah, I think when we have a white Christmas, of course, it feels a little bit more feels more festive. But I think for any of you who have ever been in snow, snow is very delightful for about 2 or 3 days. And then it becomes a lot of mafan, right? Because if it keeps snowing, then of course, every time you want to go out, you have to clean the sidewalks. You have to clean your car if it's parked outside. Of course, they have to clean the roads. And I know that one of the jobs that people really, really hate is when they have to shovel snow. Okay, you know what a shovel is, right? A shovel is that tool. So shovel is a 动词, but it's also the thing that you use. You know, usually it looks like this with a handle on it, and it has a, you know. Spade is small. Spade is usually something about this big, and you dig in the garden. Yeah, but shovel is a big thing, and so we can say to shovel snow. And one of the biggest mafan, troubles that you have to do in the wintertime is shoveling snow, because if there's snow in front of your house, and again on the sidewalk has to be clean, and of course sometimes the sidewalk is icy, which makes it even more dangerous. So anyhow, why don't we say it together? Shovel. Shovel. Yeah, and shovel can be a verb. Not really. I mean, I think we celebrated, we knew about Santa Claus. I don't think I really believe that he existed. Yeah. So, but yeah, we had Santa Claus around. So yeah. So anyhow, I don't know. I'll be surprised if we actually have a white Christmas in Pennsylvania. We'll see. But maybe. Okay, so anyhow, I thought we would go on to a big story. Of course, I think you follow the news. The country of Syria has seen a big changeover in power. Actually, the old power has been overthrown. And, as we know, Syria has been under a dictator or dictatorship for many, many years, actually decades. And it was first the father, and then the son took over. And now the son has... and his family has had to flee to Russia. So anyhow, let's read this together and see what's happening. It says, refugees return to Syria as caretaker PM appointed. Now, PM stands for Prime Minister, right? Taiwan does not have a Prime Minister, but many countries like the UK, they have a Prime Minister. Usually that's the head of the ruling party, is the head of the government. So why don't we say it together? Prime Minister. Prime Minister. And what does the word prime mean? Top. Yeah, first. Okay. Like I know many of you like to eat niu pai, right? Steaks. And I know that there's a category, a kind of U.S. steak, they call it prime. It's the type of beef they use. And if someone says, "Oh, this is prime U.S. beef," it means it's top grade. It's very good. It's very prime time. Okay, so you use a very interesting term for TV. We used to talk about prime time. Prime time means it's the best time to watch TV. It's the best time for 广告 to be on TV because the most people are watching. It's like the high point of viewers watching TV. So in America, prime time I think is usually from about, well, maybe I think a little bit later, maybe 7 p.m. until maybe about 9 or 10 p.m. It's that period after dinner, where you've had dinner and now you turn on the TV and you want to just relax and watch something. It's before you go to bed, of course, and usually the whole family can watch, right? It's not just the adults; the children are there too because they haven't gone to bed yet. And American children, unlike Taiwanese children, I know they have lots of 功课, but homework. But American children, they have homework, but usually not as much as Taiwanese. So, if you finish your homework, you can maybe watch TV in the evening. But, it's interesting because I think in more recent modern times, with, internet and web, 网路 and people can download movies. It's funny because I don't think prime time is as important as it used to be because people can watch shows anytime they want, and it doesn't have to be at that time. But anyhow, we call that prime time for TV. Okay, so it says here, refugees. You know what a refugee is, right? A refugee is somebody who's run away and they're seeking refuge. Refuge means shelter or security. They run away from their country, usually, for reasons like war, or they're trying to escape their government. But we have many refugees around the world. Why don't we say it together? Refugees. Refugees. Okay, now it says caretaker, PM, or Prime Minister appointed. What is a caretaker? I think yeah. So, obviously you see the word, it says caretaker, like take care, right? So a caretaker would be, usually it means 暂时, right? They're only there to take care of something until we have someone who is more permanent, right? So if we can talk about a caretaker government, like maybe the government is just temporary until they elect a new government, a caretaker leader, a caretaker prime minister. So it's a word that we use a lot as a 形容词. But of course, the word caretaker can also simply mean somebody who's taking care of someone, right? It can actually be a 名词. So you can say, in Taiwan, we have many foreign caretakers, right? They come from Indonesia or Vietnam, and they live with families in Taiwan, and they usually take care of a senior citizen or an older person who is living at home. I think I've told you, near my house, every morning I see Indonesian caretakers with the people they're taking care of, and they go out to the park and they do some exercise and they get some sunshine, and it's nice. So anyhow, let's say that word together. Caretaker. Caretaker. Okay. Interim. Yeah, interim means interim is like also 短期 or short term. What is it? Carekeeper, we don't use that quite as much. It's not as common. And we would not use that here. We wouldn't use it as this kind of use. We wouldn't say carekeeper. We would usually just say caretaker. Or he mentioned this word interim, which is also similar. Interim means also like temporary, in between. So, for example, we can also use this word as a 名词. You could say, next Wednesday, I'm going to fly to America. In the interim, I have lots of work I had to finish. So it means in the period of time in between, I have lots of work I have to finish. So interim can be a 形容词, but it can also be a 名词. It means a period in between one thing and another. Okay, so we say in the interim. Okay, yes. Deputy, no, deputy is more like, 副总统 or 副 whatever. But no, because it doesn't, deputy could be permanent, right? It could be somebody, it doesn't mean it's 暂时 or temporary. So why don't we say this word together? Interim. Interim. So we could also say interim PM or interim government or things like that, or in the interim. Okay, so that's a good word too. Okay, so let's go on and read this article. It says, refugees from Syria's long civil war were making their way home yesterday as a new interim prime minister said he had been appointed with the backing of the rebels who toppled former President Bashar al-Assad. Okay, so here we have these refugees from Syria's long civil war. Of course, civil war is 内战, right? So this long civil war has been, happening in this country. It's killed a lot of people. It's been devastating to the country. But they were making their way home. So they were heading home. As a new interim prime minister said he's been appointed with the backing. Now, another word for backing, of course, is support. Yeah, with the support of the rebels who toppled former president. Okay, now the rebels, of course, are people who rebel, right? So we can say rebel as a 名词, right? We can say he is a rebel or he is the rebel leader, right? But if you use this word as a 动词, we pronounce it slightly differently. We say to rebel, okay, to rebel. So the accent goes on the second syllable. So we say he is a rebel, but he rebelled against his government, okay? So why don't we say this as a 名词, as a rebel, rebel. And then as a 动词, as a verb, rebel, to rebel. Okay, so these rebels who toppled the former president. Now, what does topple mean? Overthrow. But what is, as an actual verb, as a 动词, as a normal word, what does it mean? It means to push over, okay? So let's say, if I want to topple, of course I won't do this, but if I wanted to topple this screen, I would push it and it would topple over. So it means to kind of fall over, to topple. Okay, so here they toppled the former president, but you could say he toppled over. He tripped and toppled over something. He fell over something. So you can actually do this as an action against somebody, like here they topple someone else, or you topple some object, or you can topple over something. You can trip and fall or over something. So the word can be used as a kind of an active word, or it can be something that happens to you, okay? Exactly. So you could say during the 9/11 earthquake, some buildings toppled over, or we could say the earthquake toppled many buildings. Okay, so you understand, I'm using that word in slightly different ways. The buildings toppled over, or the earthquake toppled the buildings. Right. It goes either way. Okay, so why don't we say together, toppled? Toppled. Okay, so yeah, of course here that doesn't mean that he actually fell over, but his government fell, and of course he had to run away. Okay, so let's read this together. Refugees from Syria's long civil war. Let's say that word again, Syria's long civil war were making their way home yesterday as a new interim prime minister said he had been appointed with the backing of the rebels who toppled former President Bashar al-Assad. Okay. I hope so. I mean, right now it's a little bit luan over there, right? Because many people are trying to, whenever a government is toppled, especially a dictatorship, right? Like a government like this, many other groups want to take over. They want to take power. And hopefully these groups negotiate with each other and cooperate with each other. But there's always a possibility they might start fighting with each other, right? And I know with Syria right now, there's another thing going on, and that is Israel and even the U.S. are bombing places where they have weapons, right? They want to destroy those weapons because they don't want those weapons to be used against Israel or anybody else. So they're just saying, okay, now is our opportunity. Let's destroy these weapons. So they're bombing or destroying the weapons that are around. So anyhow, this creates a little bit of a chaotic situation. Chaos means luan, right? If you say something is chaotic, it means it's, in Chinese, luan is a very good word. But if we say chaos, which is a 名词, and then we can turn this into a 形容词, we say it is chaotic, okay? Now, I know we've learned this word before. The CH is pronounced with a K sound, K, okay? Not ch. Okay, so let's say it together, chaos. Chaos, chaotic. Right, and we can use that word in many different ways. We could say today the traffic is very chaotic, or you can say this plan is very chaotic, or there's lots of chaos in the world today. Okay, so it's a good word. Yeah. So anyhow, it says, let's go on here. It says U.S. officials engaging with rebels led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham urged them not to assume autocratic leadership of the country, but instead run an inclusive process to form a transitional government. Now, here's another word, actually, that's very similar to the word we just learned, interim, and we also said caretaker, right? Transitional also means, what does the word transition mean? What's a simple word for transition? Change. I would say change, right? So you can say right now I'm going through a big transition in my life, right? I'm going through a big change in my life. I'm transitioning from, maybe I changed my job. I'm transitioning from this job to this job, or this career to this career, right? So transition is a good word, but when we use that as a 形容词, so we say transitional, it means that it's in the middle of a change, right? So a transitional government means this government is really just there doing, it's not permanent. It's not there long term. It's in the middle of doing this period of change. So we can say transitional. So this word often gets used similar to the word interim or caretaker, similar idea. Okay, so it's a good word. Let's read it together. First, this word, transition, transition, transitional, transitional. Okay, so it says here, U.S. officials engaging with rebels. Okay, now when it says engaging with somebody, of course, it doesn't mean they're 订婚, right? we know people talk about engagements, right? But engaging means just interacting with, right? If you interact with somebody, it means you're talking to them, you're speaking to them, you're communicating with them. So we could say they're interacting. Sorry, that's a CT. Interacting with, engaging with. Okay. So you could say, often we use this word. For example, you can say, when I saw him, I bumped into him at the meeting and I engaged him in conversation, or we engaged in a conversation. It means we joined a conversation. It was very funny. I was at the opening of, I think maybe some of you know, right behind 洲际 大饭店 on 潮道. They just opened 2 days ago. They opened a new 美术馆 there called the 清美美术馆. And I was there at the 开幕, right? And afterwards I was taking pictures outside, and suddenly walking towards me by himself with nobody around was the head, the 大老板 of 清美. And I froze. I thought I would love to talk to this guy, but he looked like he was busy. He didn't look at me. So he passed me by, and I thought, I should have engaged him in conversation. I should have said, hi, I run COMPASS magazine. but yeah, I thought this guy, he's been doing so much projects, building, all the, the 洲际 大饭店, the 清美成品, all those companies. And here he was by himself. So I regret that I did not engage him in conversation. I just to say hi. I think so. I forget his Xing. He's the head guy. He's the top guy. Yeah. Older guy. Yeah, but anyhow, maybe next time. So anyhow, it says U.S. officials engaging with rebels. Okay, so they were talking, led by this guy. Okay, it's funny they add a abbreviation, HTS. That's funny. They usually don't add abbreviation after a name, but HTS urged them. Okay, so they're encouraging them, they're pushing them, urging them not to assume automatic leadership of the country. So they're saying, don't just take power for yourself, right? Don't just automatically take over, but instead run an inclusive process to form a transitional government. Now, here's a really good word, inclusive. I think you can guess. Look at the word here. What does it mean? Right. If you look at the word to include, right? From the word include comes the word inclusive. Okay. So we can say if your political party or your country or your idea or whatever it is very inclusive, it means that you include many different people. Now, what would be the opposite of this word? Exclusive, right? Which is another good word that we use a lot because it comes from the word to exclude. Okay, so from that we have exclusive. Okay, exclusive. And exclusive is an interesting word because it could be negative, 否定的, right? You could say, oh, they're too exclusive. But it's funny, this word usually actually is positive. Why? Because you might say, oh, that hotel or that restaurant is very exclusive. And what does that usually mean? Very high class, 高等的, right? So if you go to an exclusive club or exclusive restaurant or exclusive hotel, you feel very, very rich or famous or, privileged. Okay. So exclusive, like sometimes, a bank will give out a 信用卡, right? And they'll say this card is exclusive only to certain people. Like I've heard that, I think it's 美国信托, American Express, they have this very famous card that everyone talks about. It's like the black card, right? I think it's black and it's all black, right? And I've heard, I don't know if this is absolutely true, but I heard with this black card, you can buy anything. You can buy a house, a plane, airplane. There's no limit on this card. So they only give this card to people who are like, billionaires. So, like, I don't know, maybe, Elon Musk, or these guys. So they just walk in with their black card and they can, and I've heard too, I think it's made out of metal. It's heavy and, so yeah, we could say the black card is exclusive to only a few people. Yeah, so you could say, I guess we could say that if someone is we can say they act in an inclusive way. Okay, so they include people. So yeah, inclusive is usually a good thing. You want to include people. So why don't we say this together? Inclusive. Inclusive. And then this word, to exclude. To exclude. Exclusive. Exclusive. Right. So anyhow, they want them to run an inclusive process. So this is a process that includes everybody to what? To create or form a transitional government. Hopefully then after that, after a period of time, they can have an election and have 民主, democracy and so on. Okay, so let's read this together. U.S. officials engaging with rebels led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham urged them not to assume automatic leadership of the country, but instead run an inclusive process let's say it again, inclusive process to form a transitional government. Transitional government. Okay, I want to say, this is a word I want to also, I forgot to mention, to assume, right? Because assume has actually two different meanings, right? One is to assume, as you say, I assume, 假设, right? I assume that after we finish today, you'll go home and eat lunch, or you'll go out to eat lunch. I assume that. But here, this assume has a different meaning. What does it mean? To take on or take over, right? So you can say he assumed a new title. It means he took on a new title for himself. Or he assumed a new job or well, actually, we don't usually say job. We say new position. This word has a kind of an idea that you have taken over something like a position or a title or something like that. Yeah, you could say it that way. But yeah, it's almost this idea that you have taken it for yourself. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. Of course, you could say he assumed a new job. I guess it means, he was given the job and he took it over. But I think often it's the idea that you take it for yourself. So here, to assume automatic leadership, to take over automatically. Okay, so that's a slightly different meaning to the word assume. Okay, just remember that. Pretend is more like, are you talking like pretend in a normal way, like the way we normally use it, or? Yeah, you could say to assume the role of a teacher. Pretend just means to act like something that you're not. So it would be different than this. Oh, presume. No, well, assume and presume. That's actually a very good question. Yeah, presume. Yeah, they're very close. It's funny because to presume, I presume, you could say it in a very similar way. You could say, well, I presume that you'll eat lunch after this. So you could say that. I presume that you already know that Christmas is 2 weeks from now. I could say that. It means I assume. So it's actually a very similar word. It's funny. It's. I would actually have to kind of see if there's any distinction between that. Presume. Now, pre, of course, means before. So it means I have this idea before you've done it, right? I presume that you're going to do this. I think you're going to do this. But we could use assume in a very similar way. And when we say this word, we'll say it together here. This S has a Z sound to it. So we say presume, okay? So why don't we say it? Presume. Presume. Okay. So, yeah, it means, we could say it in that way, I presume. Yeah, but yeah. Sometimes when you meet somebody and you don't know you think you know their name, and you say, you might say their name and you say, I presume, right? So, might say, oh, Joe Smith, I presume, means I think I know who you are. This is who you should, I believe this is who you are, okay? I think we've learned this before, but from those words, the means that we have presumption and assumption. Sometimes people say it's not good to make assumptions about other people, right? You shouldn't assume certain things, right? You shouldn't assume that your parents will clean up your room, right? For you, or that your husband or wife will take out the garbage, right? So we say don't make assumptions about other people, or we could say don't make presumptions about other people. But assumption, when we say it this way, I think we would use the word assumption more, okay? Innocence, yeah. So, oops. Sorry, that's a P. Yeah. So we say presumption of innocence. What's innocence mean? 无罪, right? So presumption of innocence means you're innocent until proven guilty, right? So until somebody actually goes to the 法院 and they say 判决, our verdict is you have been found guilty. Until then, we presume that you are innocent. That means we can't say you're guilty or you did that when there's been no final decision by a judge or a court on that situation. So it's a very common legal term. Why don't we say this word together? Innocence. Innocence. Innocent. Okay, innocent until proven guilty. Guilty. And of course, guilty means 有罪, right? Okay. Innocent, guilty. They're the opposites. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Unassuming, yeah. Yeah, unassuming is if someone is unassuming. Right. So unassuming means, yeah, what he said, you're not pretending to be something that you are not. Okay. So let's say you know somebody and they're always acting like they're very rich, and they act very like they're better than everybody else, or they're acting like they're, we say their nose is in the air. We say that person might be very, actually there's a word very similar to what we just said. Yeah, pretentious, okay? So think of the word pretend, and then pretentious means they're trying to put on, sometimes we say to put on airs, A-I-R-S, to put on airs. It means to kind of put on something for yourself that's not really there. Yeah, someone who's acting in a very affected way. It means they're pretending there's something that they're not. So we say they are very pretentious, but unassuming is the opposite of pretentious, right? Someone who just I would say that if someone's very unassuming, another very common expression, we say they are very down to earth, right? Someone who's down to earth acts very normal. They don't act pretentious. They just seem like a normal person. So, it could be that you meet somebody and they're actually very famous, or they're very rich or wealthy, but they are still very unassuming. Which is usually, I know at least in America, that's a great thing. If you're a very famous person and people meet you on the street and you act like a normal person, people will be like, oh, yeah, I like this person. He's a little bit, sometimes Donald Trump can be, a little bit pretentious. But, you know, it's interesting, though. I will add this. If you do watch some videos of him, he can be very unassuming also. He has another side to him that's quite funny. I don't know if you saw before the election, he went and worked at McDonald's, right? 麦当劳, right? He was serving people at the drive-thru. And then when Joe Biden said that Donald Trump's followers were 垃圾, garbage, what did Donald Trump do? He went and drove a 垃圾车, right? So that kind of behavior is very, we say, down to earth. People think that's funny and they enjoy that. They like that. It is interesting, though, because I think that the media often shows one side of Donald Trump. But if you go online, you actually see a lot of videos of him interacting with normal people. And he's actually very unassuming. He talks to people. He poses with photographs. So there is two sides to Donald Trump. I will say that. There is definitely an unassuming side. And there is a pretentious side as well. There's two Donald Trumps. So condescending is a very interesting word as well. Lots of good words here. Yeah. Okay, so condescending means to condescend, this word here. Condescend means to come down to somebody's level, right? To look down on somebody, okay? So if you are very condescending to somebody, it means that the way you talk to them or act towards them, it's like you're up here and you're looking down at them, right? So, you know, I'm sure you all know people who are very condescending. When you talk to them, they're like, yeah, you know, okay, maybe, you know, maybe I'll talk to you, or, you know, I don't really have time for you, but, you know, I'll say a few words. Patronizing, it's arrogant, you know, cao ao, right? So patronizing, these are all good words. Patronizing means I act like I'm giving you something special, even though maybe I'm not. So these are all good words. To condescending means to come look down on somebody. Patronizing means like I feel like I'm acting like I'm giving you something special just by maybe talking to you. So if you say, someone says, you know, let's say you need help for something, and you ask your colleague at work and they say, well, you know, I'm really busy, but yeah, I guess I can help you. You might respond to them and you say, don't be patronizing, right? Don't act like you're doing me a special favor, right? I helped you before, so you should help me, right? So these are all good words. What? Yes. Not really. No, we wouldn't say that. We would say unassuming, but we wouldn't say assuming. Okay. So yeah, lots of good words here. Let's read these together. Let's start with this one. Unassuming. Unassuming. Down to earth. Down to earth. And then condescending. Condescending. Pretentious. Pretentious. Remember, the T has a sh sound, so pretentious. Patronizing. Patronizing. Right. So you know the word descend, right? D-E-S-C-E-N-D means to do what? To go down, right? When you're in an airplane, sooner or later the airplane will start to descend. You know, the pilot will say, "Okay, fasten your seatbelts. We are now descending into Taipei." Right? Means we're going down. We're going to land in Taipei. So condescending means I'm looking down at you. I'm acting like I'm better than you, right? Okay. Now a patron, here, a patron, this word, P-A-T-R-O-N. A patron is somebody who sponsors somebody else, who supports somebody else, right? Patron's fine, right? So if, let's say that a student wants to go and study in another country, but they need more money, right? They don't have enough money. Maybe some wealthy person, a rich person, will become their patron. Or, you know, one thing I used to see in long time ago in Europe, in 欧洲, maybe, 200 years ago or whatever, many artists, 艺术家, they would have a wealthy patron. Some, maybe a business person or even a government leader who would pay them to create art, right? Because, yeah, like Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci or these guys, they all had patrons, right? They had people who supported them with money. So we call those people patrons. But patronizing is not a very good word because it means that I'm acting like I'm giving you something special when I'm not really actually doing that. So, yeah, so these are all good words. They're excellent words to look at. Oh, yeah. Boy, that's hard to say. I think every country is a little bit different. You know, I think this is it's a very controversial topic. Of course, if you ask the people who come from, who were oppressed, you know, they might say, no, of course not. There's not enough done. But then if you talk to other people, they'd say, no, that was a long time ago. You know, we should move on, right? I'll give you a good example. Is there are some American states in the U.S. who say that today, now, they should pay money to the ancestors of slaves, you know, African American slaves. They say we should pay them all this money, and a lot of people are like, why? You know, that was my family didn't own slaves. You know, my family didn't oppress them, so why should you take my money and pay it to them? You know, so this is very controversial. Some people think it's good, some people don't think it's good. You know, whatever. So that question is a very difficult question to ask. I'm sure there are some people who say, yeah, we've done quite a bit, but many other people say, no, you haven't done near enough. You need to do a lot more. So it's what? Well, and also a very emotional issue too, right? It's political, it's emotional, it's a very sensitive subject. You know, I think if you look at some countries, I think have done a very good job, would be like including South Africa, right? I think they had a very good transitional, we call that transitional justice, right? Where they find a way to balance providing justice for people, but also not taking revenge on anybody. You know, like if South Africa said, well, we're going to take revenge on all the white people in South Africa, that wouldn't work either, right? Because then you'd probably have a civil war or something like that. So there needs to be a balance. It has to be handled very carefully. Yeah, I think I have many South African white friends, and I think they would probably, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think they would probably say South Africa for them is okay. It's fine. They get treated normally like everybody else. I think the only problem they would have with many of them told me, is they feel like South Africa is a little bit not unstable, but unsafe. They feel that this new in the last 10, 20 years, the environment has become more, I don't know if you would say chaotic, but it's just not as safe as it was before. There's more crime and things like that. So that's why I think you see many of them moving to places like Taiwan, because they feel like Taiwan is a much more safe place to live and work. Botha, I think it was. Botha, I think. I could be wrong. Well, and he got the Nobel Peace Prize together with Mandela. They both got it for, yeah, I think. I maybe got my history wrong here, but anyhow. Okay, so let's go back to this article. It says, the new government must uphold clear commitments to fully respect the rights of minorities, facilitate the flow of humanitarian assistance to all in need, prevent Syria from being used as a base for terrorism or posing a threat to its neighbors, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said in a statement. Okay, so there's a variety of words here. These are all things that the U.S. 国务院 is asking or requesting for the new government. So it says the new government must uphold. Uphold means, of course, to support, right? If you uphold an idea or you uphold something, it means you support it. It's like you hold it up, right? You keep it up. So we say to uphold. Why don't we say together? Uphold. Uphold. Now you can uphold something. Usually it's an idea, right? Or a principle or something like that. You can say we uphold the idea of freedom or independence or democracy or whatever. So we uphold that says clear commitments. Okay, when you commit to something, you say, I promise I will commit to this. Commitments to what? To fully, completely respect the rights of minorities. Now, what's a minority? What's this mean? Yeah. So what's the opposite of a minority? The majority. So a majority would be most people or most things, right? And a minority is the smaller group, right? So majority would be the biggest group, and minority would be the smaller groups. So, for example, in Taiwan, would we have any minority groups? What would be a minority group? The what? Well, Christians, yeah, they're a minority. What else? Aborigines. I think usually that's what most people think of me is 原住民, right? Because they're a part of Taiwan, but they're a smaller group. So yeah, so we say minority. Of course, in America, we have many different minority groups. Of course, we have African Americans, we have Latino or Hispanic Americans, we have Asian Americans. So these are minorities. Okay, so why don't we say together minorities, minorities, and then that one majority. Okay. So they should fully respect the rights of minorities. So even though you're a minority, we will respect your 权利, your rights. Okay. Facilitate the flow of humanitarian assistance. Now, of course, we'll come back to that word, but assistance, of course, but what is humanitarian? Well, it's not so much 人权, it's more about helping people, right? So when you say humanitarian assistance or humanitarian efforts or humanitarian organization, it means an organization or something to help people, okay? So, of course, there's many humanitarian groups around the world. When people there's a disaster or people need something or the people are poor, they will provide help and assistance to them. So we can say a humanitarian is, this is a good word. So why don't we say together, humanitarian. Humanitarian. Okay, but here's a word, facilitate the flow. Flow, of course, means it's like the movement, like a flowing river, like water flowing, the flow of assistance to everyone who is in need. What does facilitate mean? Right, it means to help, to assist, to allow it to move freely, right? So there's many things we can facilitate, right? You could say the internet, 网路, facilitates the flow of information, right? Because if you want to learn about anything, you just go on the internet and you can get lots of information. So the web really facilitates the flow of information. You could say that traffic lights facilitate the flow of cars, right? They control it and help things go more smoothly. So there's many things that you can facilitate. Means you make it easier, make it goes more smoothly, okay? So why don't we say together, facilitate. Facilitate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a facility, yeah, something that you use to do something. Yeah, it's like a sub-bay almost, like yeah. So it's funny, sometimes people say, not everybody, but sometimes people say when they have to go use the facilities, it means they have to 用厕所, right? They have to go to the bathroom facilities because that is a kind of facility, right? So yeah, yeah, there's facility facility is kind of similar to that word utility, right? Utility is also something that helps people. The who? The husband? Not necessarily, but yeah, often it's the facilitator. So facilitator would be kind of like the person who makes things happen, right? Who initiates things, who gets things going, right? So I'll give you an example. Sometimes when we have a big meeting like 开会 or what do they say, 研讨会, right? It's a meeting. You have a facilitator. That is like a host. It's like a 主持人, right? Who basically, what are they facilitating? They're facilitating and discussion. Basically, I'm facilitating this discussion. I'm helping it move along, right? Because if there's nobody doing that, maybe nothing will go smoothly. So a facilitator is someone who helps things move along, helps things go smoothly. Okay? Hopefully. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so but utility, if something is very utilitarian, it means it's very useful, right? So it's that idea of using something or help. I mean, obviously there are different words, but yeah, utility would be like 水电, 瓦斯, those things are utilities. Every month you have to pay your utility bill, right? But you could say this has great utility. It means it's very useful as a general 形容词. You could say, or something is utilitarian. If it's something, we can say it, then it's very useful. Utilitarian. It's something that we can easily use. So it doesn't, when we say utilities as a 名词, then it's, 水电, 瓦斯, all that. But utility or utilitarian means it's very useful, easy to use, things like that. User friendly. Yeah. Okay, so why don't we say that word together? Utility. Utility. Utilitarian. Okay, so here we have, let's say this word again, facilitate. Okay, so facilitate the flow of humanitarian assistance to all who are in need. Prevent Syria from being used as a base for, 恐怖分子, as terrorism, or posing a threat to its neighbors. Okay, now you know what a threat is, right? 威胁, right? Okay, so often we use the word to pose a threat, means to create or be a threat to somebody. So, let's say you look at the 气象局的预告 and they say there's a typhoon nearby. This typhoon is posing a threat to Taiwan. It means that it's there and it could be a threat. It might not be a threat, but it's posing a threat. It's a possible threat. So it's kind of like you think of the word possible. It's like it's posing a threat to its neighbors. Okay. So of course, America and I'm sure most of the world wants Syria to become a stable country, right? Because it's not been a stable country for a very long time. Yeah. It's funny, long time ago, when Syria was a stable country, although it was still a dictatorship, I remember watching a travel TV show about travel, and they were talking about all the travel places you could visit in Syria, and they look really interesting. And I remember even thinking to myself, I thought, I should go there and check it out. They have a lot of old Roman, Loma, Roman cities there and other things there. There's a city there called Aleppo that's very famous for its Roman ruins. And unfortunately, I think all that's been destroyed. So yeah, it's too bad. Okay, so let's read this. The new government must uphold clear commitments. Let's say it again. Commitments to fully respect the rights of minorities. Minorities. Facilitate the flow of humanitarian assistance. Let's say it again. Humanitarian assistance to all in need. Prevent Syria from being used as a base for terrorism. Terrorism. Or posing a threat to its neighbors. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said in a statement. Right. It's funny, when I look at his name, most times when you spell Anthony, it usually has an H here, a TH. That's the more common spelling, but it's interesting, his is without an H. So you know what short for Anthony is, right? You can see it here. Tony. So, somebody says, my name is Tony, probably their full name is Anthony. So Tony is a short word for a short version of Anthony. Just like, what's a short name for William? Bill, B-I-L-L, right? What's a short name for, what are some other ones? Richard. Well, you could say that, but there's another word. Dick. Yeah, which some people don't like they don't think it sounds good, but D-I-C-K, yeah. So, but yeah, Richard is one of my best friends. His father's name is Richard, but everybody called him Dick. Yeah, and it was very normal. Anton, yeah, Anton, yeah. Trying to think, there's many English names like this. Elizabeth would be what? Or what? More commonly, Beth, Beth. Now, Grant, I will admit there are people whose actual name is Beth, but Beth is actually short for Elizabeth. Another one, Robert, Bob, B-O-B. So Robert becomes Bob, right? So it's very funny how many English names, even women's names and men's names, the long name, but then there's a short version of that name. Yeah. I think so. I think it's pretty common. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think he's tried hard, and I think he's done pretty. I think I would give him a B minus, B maybe. Yeah. I think he's tried. One thing about Anthony Blinken that bothered, this is me personally, is just the way he talks. I feel like it sounds like a school teacher. It just, yeah, like a professor. And yeah, exactly, like a professor. And I feel like when he talks like that, I don't know if anyone, it almost sounds like, I don't feel like like he doesn't mean it sometimes. Like he's just saying something and it sounds very nice, but I'm like, where's the emotion? You need some emotion behind it, right? Some force behind it. But he always has this very calm way of speaking and like a professor. And I don't know. That's just me. That's my opinion. In your opinion? Okay. Charles Schultz. Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about. What's his name? I can picture his face in my mind. Yeah, I forget his name. Yeah, I'll remember it later, I'm sure. The issue with secretaries of states is often one president will have more than one, right? They might change the secretary of state. Some secretary of state serve for a very long time and others not so long. But yeah, probably one of the most famous ones in modern American. Baker. Yeah. James Baker. Yeah. He was good. From Texas, I think. I think he's from Texas. Yeah. Republican. Yeah, very good Secretary of State. But probably one of the most famous would be Henry Kissinger because of everything that happened during Vietnam. And of course, he was the one that went to China and, all that. Some people like Henry Kissinger. Some people hate him because of some things that he did. So anyhow, he's kind of controversial. So anyhow, it says here, HTS is a former Al-Qaeda affiliate that led the anti-Assad revolt and has lately downplayed its extremist roots. Actually, this is interesting. Let me go back and check something here. Okay, sorry. I thought this was a person's name, but this is not a person. This is a group. So that's why they use that initials HTS. That's why I thought it was kind of weird. I thought this was somebody's name, but it's actually a group's name. So here it says HTS is a former Al-Qaeda affiliate. Now, I think you know Al-Qaeda, right? We talked about that a lot. Really bad terrorist group, okay? But affiliate means what? Yeah, what it means you have 有关系, right? You're connected. What if we say what is your, another word that's very similar is what is your affiliation? Yeah, your political affiliation. Or you could say who are you affiliated with or to, right? And so if somebody is doing something, you might say, well, who are you connected to? Who do you have like your 关系 with? Who are you related to? So what's your affiliation? So we could say, sometimes we talk about political affiliation. We could talk about religious affiliation. There's many ways we can use this word. But here it says as a 名词, this is a noun. It says they are an affiliate. So sometimes with companies, business affiliations, we could talk about that. You could say this company is affiliated with that, 机构 or that 团体 or whatever, or it is an affiliate of another company. Like, there's many companies like this. Okay, so why don't we say it together? Affiliate. Affiliate. Affiliation. Affiliation. And then let's say affiliated to. Affiliated to. Okay, so yeah, this is a good word. So they are a former, of course, the key word here is former, not current. They're a former Al-Qaeda affiliate that led the anti-Assad revolt. Now, the word revolt is very similar to the word what? We just learned it. Rebel, right? So revolt means to rebel. If you revolt against somebody, you rebel against them. It's the same kind of 动词, okay? So this is the word we get, from this word we get the word revolution, right? Or it's similar to, obviously revolution means like a circle turning, but you know, it's very similar to the word revolution, revolt, revolution, so on. So let's say a word together, revolt. Revolt. Now, I've taught you this before a long time ago, but if something is revolting, what does that mean? As a 形容词, it actually means very disgusting, you know, something you do not like. Yeah, that's a good word too. We could say repulsive. Repulsive, disgusting, revolting. It means it's something that makes you think it's terrible. It makes you feel sick, right? So, you know, maybe for some foreigners, 外国人, if you said, hey, try some chou doufu, and they might say, oh, that's revolting, right? Okay. So, or they might say that's disgusting or that's repulsive, right? So yeah, it's a word that you use when you really don't want to even touch it. You don't want to look at it. It's terrible. Okay. So yeah. So anyhow, yeah, it's a good word. So one. Unruly means not well behaved. Yeah. Yeah, kids are unruly. But it would be different from these words, right? If someone is acting in an unruly way or they are unruly children, it means they are, you know, 调皮, right? They don't act, they're running, they're going crazy. What? Right. Well, they need discipline. Yeah. You know, you've been out and you see kids and they're going crazy, they're running all over the place and they're screaming, and you say, those children are too unruly, right? They need to be controlled because nobody's controlling them. Okay, so let's read these words together as a 形容词. And of course, when we say this as a 形容词, it has to have an ing after it. Okay, so revolting, revolting, disgusting, disgusting, repulsive, repulsive. Now, as a verb, as a 动词, these words have slightly different meanings. Disgust means to make you feel sick, right? That disgusts me, or you might say, you disgust me, right? If you don't like somebody. Repulse means that it means to push away, to push away. So, of course, if something is repulsive, it's pushing you away. You don't want to be near it, okay? So these are all good words to know. And then he just mentioned this word, different meaning, but unruly means like, you know, if someone is, especially, we use this word a lot for children, but it can be used for adults, and it can also be used for objects. I'll tell you the word I hear the most for unruly is someone's 头发, if their hair is very messy, right? Like when you wake up in the morning, we say your hair might be very unruly. It's going all over the place, right? And so we might say her unruly hair. I guess it doesn't even have to be when you wake up in the morning. Maybe her hair is very curly and it's hard to comb, so it's unruly. Yeah, his hair was very unruly. Boris Johnson, his hair was kind of like everywhere. Boris Johnson, yeah. So so we talk about unruly hair. Okay, there's a funny expression we use for that. I think in America we call it bed head. Okay, bed, 床, head, right? When you wake up in the morning, your hair is everywhere. So you say, wake up with bed head, right? Means your hair looks really terrible. Okay, so it says here, it led the anti-Assad revolt and has lately, of course, what's another word for lately? Recently, lately, downplayed its extremist roots. Now, what is to downplay something? Yeah, it means to say, oh, 没有不是这样子，没有什么. Yeah, it's to talk down something. So, for example, I'm trying to think of a good example. If someone said, I heard that you left your job. Is there something wrong? And you might say, oh, no, it's no problem. You know, I still like them. They like me. I just decided I need to do something different. So what am I doing? I'm downplaying that situation. I'm saying it's 没有什么, right? It's no big deal. Or somebody says, hey, I heard you had a fight with your brother. Oh, no, that was nothing. We were just having a discussion. So I'm downplaying this argument. I'm saying it's nothing, okay? Sure. Yeah, we shouldn't downplay certain things that are dangerous, right? Now, actually, it's a good example because we can say this. We can say he played something down. He played it down. So we can use that word in either way, but to downplay is a 动词. Okay, so why don't we say together, downplayed. Downplayed. So what did it downplay? It's extremist roots. Now, root is like a gun, right? Origin. Where did you start? And extremist is a word that we often connect to 恐怖分子, because what they do is very extreme, right? Everybody has some sort of, 主义, right? Ideas. But if you go out and kill people because you think that, I have the right to do that, that's very extreme, right, in those ideas. So we might say a terrorist is an extremist. They act in a very extreme way. So why don't we say together, extremist? Extremist. So basically they're saying, no, we're not really related to Al-Qaeda anymore. That was before, and we don't support them. And so they're downplaying that connection. I hope they're right. I really do hope they're right, because Al-Qaeda is pretty terrible. Okay, so let's read this together. HTS is a former Al-Qaeda affiliate that led the anti-Assad revolt and has lately downplayed its extremist roots. Extremist roots. Okay, so roots is a very good word, right? We can say, what are your family roots, right? Because, we often talk about a family tree, right? Well, here's my family way back 500 years ago, and then it goes all the way down. So, of course, actually it goes this way. Sorry, it starts in the roots and goes up to the top, right? So we have a family tree when the roots are where they started. Okay, where are your roots? Or we might say, where's your family roots? Or we might say, what are the roots of your company? Where do your company start? Okay, so this is a common word we use, roots. Okay. What? Right. We wouldn't say usually grass-rooted. Grass-root is usually more used as a more of a noun, like a 名词. Like we might say, it's actually like a 形容词, but we might say his grassroots followers or his grassroots support. It means at the very basic level, where does he have his support? Or it doesn't have to be 乡下. It just means the very lowest level. Now that could be in the city, it could be in the country, but it means what's your base, your foundation. And so we say grassroots supporters. It means low level supporters. So we use the word, grass, right? 草. So we say GRASS, one word, ROOTS, grassroots. Grassroots. You say your base, your foundation. Yeah. So grassroots. No, it's slightly different. We say bluegrass music. Yeah, which is very funny because grass is not usually blue, right? So let's see how well you know this. There's a state in America called their slogan is the bluegrass state. What state is that? Does anybody know? Yes, very good. Kentucky. So Kentucky is actually called the bluegrass state. Now it's because, I don't know if I'm completely correct, but there actually is places where the grass, I think, maybe looks a little bit blue. I'm not sure, but but it's a very common word, expression for Kentucky. So they call it, yeah. So when we talk about bluegrass music, it's a kind of a country and Western music. It's a country, 乡村音乐, right? It's a very, and I guess it's, I think, maybe connected to Kentucky. I don't know. Oh, grassroots ambassador. Yeah, so grassroots ambassador, ambassador is usually 大使, it's a high-level person. But a grassroots ambassador would be somebody who represents you at the very basic level, to the ordinary people, It's not an official title. It's more of an expression. So, yeah. Horse racing. Yeah, very famous for horse racing. Yeah. Kentucky is famous for a couple things. Well, I'm sure it's famous for more than that. Yeah, maybe. If you ask people in Kentucky, I don't think they would say that. But they would say horse racing or horses. They're very famous for horses. And they're also famous for, Kentucky is famous for, not fried chicken. I just forget what I was going to say. Bourbon, whiskey, right? So when I went to Kentucky, my friends gave me a bourbon tour. So I went from one 酒厂 to the next 酒厂 just to try all the different kinds of bourbon whiskey, because bourbon whiskey, their roots is in Kentucky. Now, of course, they make bourbon whiskey in many different places. Even Hawaii has its own bourbon whiskey now. But Kentucky is considered the home of bourbon whiskey. So that's why, in fact, to be honest, I don't know if, like when you buy champagne, 气泡酒, champagne, it has to be from Champagne in France. It cannot come from Spain or California or somewhere else. If it comes from another place, they call it sparkling wine, like 气泡酒, right? But if it's called champagne, it only can come from the area called Champagne, 那个区 in 法国, okay? Bourbon, I'm not absolutely sure if it has to officially come from Kentucky, but I know that's why, many people, I know you probably know the 品牌, it's called Jack Daniels. Some people mistakenly say that's bourbon. Actually, it's not. If you look in the bottle, it says Tennessee whiskey. So it comes from the state of Tennessee, which is next to Kentucky, but it's not in Kentucky. So yeah, many people think Jack Daniels is bourbon, but it's not bourbon. It's Tennessee whiskey. Yeah. I'm not. I think champagne's nice. But to be honest, I've had champagne. I've had sparkling wine from other places, and they all are pretty good. I know there's really, really high-end champagne. It's excellent. So yeah, I'm sure some champagne is worth the cost. But it's not my normal drink. So yeah. Okay, so it says here, in a brief address on state television on Tuesday, Mohammed al-Bashir, a figure little known across most of Syria, said he would lead the interim authority until March 1. Okay, so a brief address, a brief speech, that's what address means here, on state TV. He's little known, so many people do not know him across most of Syria, said he will lead, and here's that word, interim authority. Now, of course, authority would be another word for government here, an authority, the authorities, okay, on March 1. Okay, so let's read this. In a brief address on state television on Tuesday, Mohammed al-Bashir, a figure little known, let's say it again, a figure little known across most of Syria, said he would lead the interim authority until March 1. Okay. So it says here, today we held a cabinet meeting that included a team from the Salvation government that was working in Idlib and its vicinity, and the government of the ousted regime. Okay, so this is interesting. of course, you know what a cabinet is here. You notice it's a capital C, right? So in Taiwan, the capital would be like the 行政院, right? It would be the head of all the major departments. So we say cabinet. But it says we had a cabinet meeting that included a team from the Salvation Government. So I don't really know what this means. I mean, it's obviously a special name because it uses a big S. But salvation comes from the word what? Save, right? So if you save somebody, you provide them or you give them salvation. That comes from that simple word S-A-V-E. We get the word salvation. Okay, this word gets used a lot in Christianity. You know, 基督教, right? They say God gives me salvation. Okay. Yeah, so I think it means this government, saved Syria, I guess. So, but it's a special name because they must use this name. So why don't we say together, salvation. Salvation. Okay, so the Salvation Government that was working in Idlib, this is a city, and its vicinity. Good word. What does vicinity mean? Nearby, okay? Neighborhood, yeah, but it usually means in the area, okay? So we could say maybe after class today, your friend or somebody says, hey, are there any good restaurants in the vicinity of the library? It means nearby the library, okay? In the area, okay? What is in the vicinity of your house? Is there a McDonald's in the vicinity of your house? Okay, or something like that. You can use this word in that way. So why don't we say together, vicinity? Vicinity. Okay, so yeah, or we could simply say, and it's in its area or in its neighborhood or something like that. And the government of the ousted regime. Okay, so first of all, the word regime, what's a simple regime basically means a government, but often I should say usually the word regime is not used for a democratic government. It's used for a non-democratic government. Yeah, like a dictator. We would never use the word regime for, say, like Taiwan or United States or the UK. We might use the word regime for, well, Syria, North Korea, or even China, right? We might say regime because it's not democratically elected. So why don't we say together, this word has it's not a g, it's a zh sound, kind of a zhe. So why don't we say together, regime. Regime. Okay, and ousted means what? You can tell, I think, by looking at this word. It means kicked out, right? If someone has been ousted, it means they've been kicked out of their position. You know, they've been pushed out. Okay, so this is an ousted government. Of course, before, you know, they had their government, and recently they were ousted. So ousted here is a 形容词, but it can be also used as a 动词. We ousted the former president or the president. Okay, so why don't we say together, ousted? Ousted. Okay. So it seems like they're trying to be inclusive here. They're trying to include everybody in this meeting. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What is it? What is it used for? What does it mean? If you think of it, let me know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's read this together. Today we held a cabinet meeting. Cabinet meeting that included a team from the Salvation Government that was working in Idlib and its vicinity. Vicinity. And the government of the ousted regime. Ousted regime. He said. Right. Okay. I think Iraq has I think they have elections, so I do think it's not a I wouldn't say it's a fully democratic government, but it seems like it's democratic. I mean, they do I think they elect their representatives and their leader. So yeah. But Yeah, it's often difficult, in these countries that they have these different groups that really do not like each other. So yeah, but anyhow, I think we'll go on and look at a different story now. But this, right? I think obviously Israel sees this as an opportunity, right? But I think in one sense, obviously, bombing another country is not often a good thing. But I do think that Israel is famous. Not famous. Israel is concerned that if they leave all these weapons lying around, that if Syria becomes chaotic after this revolution or this overthrow, that it will become, those weapons will be used against them, right? And of course, Syria has not been a friend to Israel. There's been more than one war between Syria and Israel. So I think Israel's attitude is, well, right now it's very chaotic. We have all these different groups, and we should just make sure that these weapons are not going to be used against us. But I think the Golan Heights, of course, during the 1967 war, Israel occupied that area. It's this heights. When we say heights, it's this high area overlooking Israel. Golan. Hey, and the reason why they occupied it is because those heights were being used to attack Israel, to shoot, artillery into Israel. So I think, again, Israel's thinking defensively. Okay, what do we need to do to protect our country if Syria becomes chaotic? What if we have Al Qaeda terrorists there or other groups there that are anti-Israel? What do we do? And remember that the former Syrian government was very closely connected to Iran, right? So I do think that there's concern that this still could become a problem for Israel. So I think that's why they're bombing these military bases, and they're also occupying this Golan Heights is to protect themselves. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's controversial, but I can understand their thinking in this regard. Israel's an interesting country because they don't mess around. Like if they think something is going to harm their security or hurt their people, they will attack. They will go and take care of it. That's what they've done in Lebanon. That's what they've done, of course, of course we know in Gaza Strip. But they don't mess around. They're very serious about that, so yeah. Okay, so I thought, because we were talking about Syria, I thought we would just look at this other story that's related to this. Of course, this is a connected story. But again, I'm always, whenever I look at these articles, I'm usually looking for words that we can learn together. So here it says, prisoners stagger free from Syria's slaughterhouse. Okay, that's a pretty grim sounding name. What does slaughter mean? Kill, but not just kill, widespread killing, right? Now, normally, in normal life, what is a slaughterhouse? Yeah, for what do we usually kill in a slaughterhouse? Pigs, cows, I don't know, chickens maybe. Yeah, food. I mean, many of us eat meat, so you have to have a place where you kill these animals so that you can have them for meat. So usually a big area, not one animal, but maybe hundreds of animals, where they go through this to kill them so that we can prepare them for food. So we call that a slaughterhouse. Slaughter is usually, it's an idea of killing lots of things, not just one thing, but a slaughter means a widespread killing. So, but here, of course, we're not talking about a real slaughterhouse. We're talking about a prison that they have described as a slaughterhouse. So it's a very grim sounding name. So it says here, prisoners stagger free. What does stagger mean? Yeah, so if you're walking like this, right, like you're very tired, or maybe you were injured, or maybe you were just in an accident and you stagger, it means you're walking in a very unstable way, okay? But I will say there's another meaning to the word stagger. Well, okay, that's the third meaning to staggering. But the word I was thinking of is if you say, let's say, I'm trying to think of an example here. Let's say that we have to move to a small room, and that room can only take 10 students at one time. So we say, well, what are we going to do? Well, we say, well, why don't we stagger the times, and one group will meet at 10 o'clock, and one group will meet at 10:30, and one group will meet at 11 o'clock. So what are we doing? We're staggering means we're making things at different times. We're kind of, but it means that it's kind of like this, right? It's kind of like there's different times or different, yeah. I'm trying to think of another good example. It's basically when you don't want to do something all at the same time, so you divide it up into different times. So we say staggered times, okay? So maybe the class is held at staggered times, or attendance is staggered, right? So this group comes now, and then this group comes, and this group, they all come at different times. So it's a 形容词 or a 动词 that we can use for that. Now, he used another word. He said staggering. 加一个 ing, staggering. If something is staggering, what does that mean as a 形容词? It's shocking. Yeah, maybe you could say amazing, but usually shocking. Wow, that's a staggering amount of money. If someone says, I just made, $10 million, because I sold my house, and I'd say, wow, that's a staggering amount of money. So it means an amazing or shocking amount of money, or that was a staggering tragedy or disaster. So again, it's something that's so shocking that, again, this idea of staggering, like it's shocking. Yeah. We can stumble in our speech. Staggering speech. Yeah, I guess we could have staggering speech. Someone who's not talking in a stable way. Yeah. But often we say stumbling speech, the way they talk is not very clear. It's not very, it's a little bit up and down. Yeah. So why don't we say together, stagger, stagger, staggering, staggering. Okay, so these prisoners are staggering free from this slaughterhouse. Okay, now here it says notorious jail. Even from a distance, prisoners maimed by torture, weakened by illness, and emaciated by hunger could be distinguished. Okay, so there's a lot of words here. What does notorious mean? Yeah, it usually means famous in a negative way. So we talk about a notorious criminal, or a notorious killer, or a notorious dictator, somebody who's famous but not for a good reason, But I will add something here. I have noticed in recent years that this word is sometimes used just to mean famous. It doesn't. I've seen people use the word just simply to mean that somebody is famous or well known. So I think this word is normally used in a negative way, but sometimes you will see it used just to mean someone is famous, notorious. Okay. Now you could use it in a lighter way, right? You could say he is notorious for being late, like me, right? I am notorious for being late to this class. Okay, I'm famous for being late. I usually walk in a few minutes late or 10 minutes late. So you could say I'm notorious for that. You could say she is notorious for forgetting to do her homework. Okay, so she's famous for doing that. So that it's used in a slightly lighter way. We can use it in that way. Right, yeah. So you have to, it's funny. Say it with a smile. So why don't we say it together? Notorious. Notorious. Okay, so it says even from a distance, even from a long ways, far away, prisoners maimed by torture. Now, you know what torture is. Torture is to put pain on somebody, right? Usually it's not, torture is never good, right? You should not torture people or torture animals, but it's to inflict or put pain on, to cause pain for something or someone or something like an animal. Sometimes just because people enjoy it. But what does maimed mean? Well, not necessarily. Maimed means you are crippled. You are crippled by something. So let's say you get in a bad motorcycle accident and afterwards you cannot walk normally. So you could say, I was maimed by that accident. Or you had something happen to you. This word maimed usually comes from some sort of accident or disaster or something that someone did to you. It's not like intentional. I mean, we don't usually say he was maimed by his surgery or operation or 开刀. We don't usually talk that way. But we would say he might be maimed by an accident, 车祸. Okay? So it means you have something now that is not right. It's not normal. Or it's crippled or handicapped or something like that. You can't use it normally. So that's a good word. Why don't we say together, maimed? Maimed. So it's a 动词. Maimed by torture. Oh, let's say that word again too. Now, of course, this has more, the second T has a ch sound to it. Let's say together, torture. Torture. Right. Now, torture is terrible, but we sometimes also use this word in a slightly lighter way, right? You could say, please turn off that music. It's torturing my ears, right? Okay. I'm sure that some of you have music that you hate, right? Some kind of music. And you say, that music is torturing my ears. It's putting pain on my ears. Or you could say, the teacher tortured his students with homework or too much homework, okay? So it means he inflicted pain. He caused them pain by what he did or music that they listened to. So we use that word in other ways too. Okay, weakened by illness. Of course, they're very weak because, of course, illness is sickness, right? Illness. Let's say it together. Illness. Illness. And emaciated by hunger. Now, this is a word I don't think we've learned. What does emaciated mean? Very, very thin, not in a healthy way, not normal thin. You're unusually unhealthy thin because of something, usually because of hunger. So if you go to you see pictures on the news of African countries or places where there's a war and the people are not getting enough food and they become emaciated, means they become thin, too thin, in an unhealthy way. So why don't we say together, emaciated? Emaciated. Okay, so they were emaciated. Now, you could use this also as a 形容词. You could say an emaciated person or his emaciated face or whatever. So emaciated by hunger, okay, could be distinguished. So here, this could be distinguished. It means it connects to this here. Even from a distance, even from far away, these people could be distinguished. You could tell what was going on. You could tell what their condition was. Okay, so why don't we say together, distinguished? Distinguished. This is another word that has more than one meaning. I think you already know this, but to distinguish means to tell one thing from another thing, to set it apart, right? You can say, how can you distinguish? Here's a common question for Westerners. People will ask them, can you distinguish between a Japanese person and a Taiwanese person and a Korean person and a Chinese person? And some people be like, no, I can't distinguish which is which or the difference, right? And other people are like, oh, no, I totally know, right? So it's to tell apart one thing from another, okay? But we can also use this word if we say he is a very distinguished person. What does that mean? It means they have a very high standing. Their status is very high. To distinguish yourself often means to do something that makes you famous or gives you honor. Something that gives you honor. Like, let's say if you won an award or you are a great scientist or you are an architect, you could say, wow, that's or a musician, that's a distinguished musician. So it's another word that we use in a very different way. So let's say it one more time, distinguished. Distinguished. And then as a 动词, let's say it, to distinguish. To distinguish. Often we say to distinguish between this and that, right? To distinguish between a Japanese person and a Korean person. I remember a long time ago, I was riding a bus. I was on a bus going up to Lishan on the Zhonghan Gonglu, and there was like 3 or 4 guys in the back of the bus, and they were obviously visitors, backpackers, 背包客, and I really wasn't paying attention to them. And I was trying to be friendly. I said, oh, are you from Japan? And they looked at me and they're like, no, we're from Korea. So I did not distinguish that they were speaking Korean. So yeah, of course, you don't want to call a Korean person Japanese. They will not be very happy about that. Okay. Noses, yeah. So actually, that's an interesting word. If you say a distinguished nose, actually a better word for that would be prominent. Yeah. But prominent also means someone who's at a very high level, right? A prominent scientist, a prominent leader, it means it's very high. So, but it can be used as a physical word to say it's very tall, like a prominent mountain or prominent nose. So, huh? Honky. Oh, no. Honky is that's a very old word that they would use in the Chichinian diet to talk about white people. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's what you mean, but yeah. Anyhow, we would say a prominent nose or a big nose. So why don't we say together prominent? Prominent. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So let's start reading this here. Let's look at what it says. It says, armed men broke the bolts on the cell, and the prisoners crept out, haggard, bewildered, and scarcely believing that their years of torment in Syria's most brutal jail were over. Okay, so armed men, of course, these are men with guns. Okay, they broke the bolts on the cell. What is a cell? It's a place where they put prisoners, right? So if you get arrested by the police today and they put you in jail, you will probably be in a prison cell, right? I have to, of course, the first person I thought of right now is Ke Pi, right? Ke Wencha, he's in a cell, right? He has to stay in a cell. Now, a cell usually has bars and you cannot go out. Cell has a completely different meaning. What is that meaning? Your body has many cells, right? Okay. Yeah, how do you say it in Chinese? Cell? Yeah, qipao, yeah. Yeah, a cell phone. But that has a different idea behind it. It's something to do with cellular. Yeah, it comes from the word cellular, which is a slightly different. It's a technical term, but yeah, we say cell phone, right, or mobile phone. But yeah, so the cell is a room that you are prisoner or someone in jail or prison is kept in. It's called a prison cell or jail cell. Okay, what is a bolt? It could be, but there could be a small bolt too. I don't know, today you don't see it as much, but many doors will have a sliding bolt. It's a metal thing and you push it across and it will close the door, right? So if you want to lock your door, you just slide the bolt across. So a bolt is usually it's a bar or a pin that slides back and forth to lock something. Now, of course, some bolts are very big and some are very small, but we call that a bolt. So they broke the bolt, okay, on the cell, and the prisoners crept out. Now, crept comes from the word what? Creep, C-R-E-E-P, right? And creep means to move very slowly, right, out of something. Now, you might creep out of something because you're being careful, or you might be creeping out because you're weak, right? So you could say he crept out of bed after being sick for 2 weeks, okay? He kind of crawled out of bed, okay? So crept out. Why don't we say together, creep, creep, crept, crept. Okay, now here's some good words. Haggard. What does haggard mean? What? Yeah, but haggard is more of a general appearance. It means that you look like you are very weak or sick. When you look at somebody and their face is very, they're very pale, like you said, their skin is very white and maybe their cheeks are kind of shrunken and their body looks very thin, we might say they are very haggard looking. It's usually because they're weak or they're sick or they've been in a prison, but we say they're very haggard. Yes? Gaunt, yeah, but gaunt is even more specific. Gaunt means it looks very narrow. Like if your face is very gaunt or your body is very gaunt, it means very thin. A little bit like the word emaciated. Yeah. So actually, that's a pretty good word. Very similar. We talked about the word emaciated. That's a U-N-T, gaunt. So you might say his gaunt face. Okay, that's often what we talk about, his gaunt face. But yeah, haggard. So maybe you see your friend and they haven't seen them in 2 weeks, and you look at them and you're like, wow, you look quite haggard. What happened? And they might be like, oh, well, I've been working, 16 hours a day and I haven't gotten any sleep and I'm too tired. And, or I've been sick, and so someone might look very haggard, or we might simply say they are haggard. Okay, so why don't we say together, haggard? Haggard. What does bewildered mean? Yeah, it means confused, right? If you're like, what's going on? Where am I? What's happening? That's bewildered. Now, you could say, I was bewildered by something, right? I was bewildered by his words. I was bewildered by his actions. I didn't understand it. I was confused, okay? So it's a very good word. It's the same as confused. Let's say together, bewildered. Bewildered. Now, you can bewilder someone else, right? If you say, I bewildered him, I confused him, just like you can say, I am confused, or I confused him, okay? Yeah, what? Puzzle. Oh, puzzle. Yeah, puzzle. Puzzl. Yeah, to puzzled, right? Yeah, so actually, yeah, that's correct. We could say puzzled, or we could say to puzzle somebody, right? I was puzzled by his behavior. I was bewildered. But I think bewildered is a slightly stronger word. It means you're really you don't know what's going on. You're just completely confused, okay? So one more time, let's say bewildered. Okay, so they were haggard, bewildered, and scarcely believing that their years of torment were over. Now, scarcely means almost not, right? Scarcely. I can scarcely believe that we're already at the end of 2024. It means I hardly. So I think another word you could say is hardly, Hardly. I can hardly believe that the year is almost over. I can scarcely believe that the year is almost over, okay? So why don't we say together, scarcely? Scarcely. And what does the word scarce mean? Very little, right? So we could say right now, I don't know, what's very scarce? Well, sometimes in Taiwan, water is scarce, right? If there's not a lot of rain. I hear that this winter is supposed to be quite dry. You can see every day is like this. So maybe, I hope not, maybe in 3 months or 4 months, we might have a water shortage. But we would say, if we want to turn that into a 形容词, we say a scarcity. It means basically a shortage, 缺水, right? Scarcity, a water scarcity, or a scarcity of water, or a scarcity of food. You can say food is scarce. Water is scarce. So this word can be used in different ways like that, okay? So why don't we say again, scarcely, scarcity, and then simply scarce. Right. Okay, so they were scarcely believing that their years of torment. Now, here's a good word. What does torment mean? Yeah, it doesn't have to be torture. It just means that something was causing you great pain. Now, this word can be used in many ways. It can be used to torment somebody, means to cause them trouble and pain. Or you can say, I was tormented by someone. Okay? So, I think I've shared this. Maybe we've talked about this word before, but, like a typical situation is when you're a kid and you have a younger brother or sister and you like to give them trouble. And your parents say, stop tormenting your sister, right? Or your brother. It means you keep giving them trouble, right? You keep bothering them, or maybe you're bullying them, right? But you're tormenting them. You're making them upset. So to torment someone means that you are causing them trouble or pain. But you can say, I was tormented by him, okay? So here it says years of torment. Now, of course, this is pain or torture or agony or other trouble. Okay, so they could hardly believe that their years of torment in Syria's most brutal jail were over. Finished. What's brutal again? We talked about this. Cruel, okay? If someone is a very brutal person, it means they're cruel, or maybe they like to cause pain for other people, okay? What does that mean? Oh, I get it. It means to create scarcity. No, we wouldn't say scarcity marketing, but you would say, there's no specific word for that. We would simply say create scarcity to drive demand, or to create demand, right? So if you want the price for something to go up, or you want people to buy, maybe you create scarcity. You know, I'll give you a great example. The diamond industry. You know, diamonds. What is it? 钻石, right? Diamonds. There's a lot of diamonds, but I know in South Africa they actually create scarcity. They hold the diamonds back. They have these huge vaults where they keep diamonds, and they only release a little bit at a time. Why? Because if they released all the diamonds, what would happen? The price would drop down really. But they want people to spend lots of money for a diamond. So they create scarcity to drive or promote demand. What? Derby? There's a very famous one called De Beers. De Beers, yeah. So I don't know how it works in Taiwan, but I don't know if maybe you've heard this, or maybe it's the same in Taiwan. You know, in America, we say, how much should a man spend on a diamond ring for his fiance, for his wife? When before they get married, of course, when he wants to propose to her, how much should he spend on a diamond ring? There's a standard. Does anyone know? I think I might be slightly wrong, but I believe this sounds kind of crazy now that I think about it, but I think they say you should spend 3 months' salary on a diamond ring. Maybe it's 2 months. I forget. 2 months sounds better. But no, but I think it's 3 months. They say, I mean, of course, this is just what people say. I mean, there's no rule about this, but yeah, they say, yeah, if you're going to buy a diamond ring for your, you want to propose, you know, 订婚, you want to get engaged, a man should spend, it's good for a man to spend 3 months of salary on that diamond ring, which is pretty expensive. So that means it's a floating standard, right? If you're very rich, then of course the diamond might be huge, right? If you're not so rich, the diamond might be smaller, but it's still 3 months of salary. So anyhow, you don't have to do that, but that's what people say. Okay, so yeah. What? Okay, I'm not familiar with that term, but maybe that's what they say. Yeah, maybe, yeah. It's that idea of scarcity. Yeah. Takeaway? Again, I'm not a business person, so that might be the word they use. I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay, so let's read this together. Armed men broke the bolts. Broke the bolts on the cell, and the prisoners crept out. Okay, let's say it again. Prisoners crept out. Haggard, bewildered, and scarcely believing that their years of torment in Syria's most brutal jail were over. Right. Okay. Let's see here. So it says, "What has happened?" asked one prisoner after another. "You are free. Come out. It's over. It is over," cried the voice of a man filming them on his telephone. "Bashar has gone. We have crushed him." So it says here, "What has happened?" asked one prisoner after another. Of course, when it says after another, it means one after another. Not just one person, but this person, this person, this person, this person. They're all asking, what has happened? What's going on? Okay. So, yeah. So he says it's over. It's some guys filming them. Okay, we have crushed him. We have, yeah, not killed him, but crushed his government. Okay, so let's just read this and then we'll be done. What has happened? Asked one prisoner after another. "You are free. Come out. It is over," cried the voice of a man filming them on his telephone. "Bashar has gone. We have crushed him." Crushed him. Right. Crush, of course, means to smash, to press down, right? So yeah. So it's quite dramatic, right? I mean, if you're in prison like this for years and you don't think you're ever going to get out, and then one day you're free, you can come out. It's over. It's done. Yeah, like World War II. When the Germans had concentration camps and all these prisoners. Well, and also the Russians. Yeah. So in fact, Auschwitz, I think, was liberated by the Russians. I think. Yeah. Yeah, it was in Poland. Yeah. You can still go visit that camp. It's quite moving, I think. But yeah, similar to that idea. Yeah, happy that you're out. A new life. Okay, good. Any questions? Another question? Yeah. It is. And it's not a word we use every day, but it is a word. It's the same thing. It's not a common word. I think I'm spelling this right, but it's called abattoir. It's a slaughterhouse. It's a place to kill animals for food. Yeah. Okay, good. It is, I think. Yeah. Okay, so I want to say Merry Christmas to all of you. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Again, it's hard to believe we're already there. So, yeah, we'll see you in January. Noel. Yeah. Noel. Yeah. I think that's the right way to say it. So, yeah. Okay. 圣诞节快乐. Yeah. 新年快乐. Yeah.